Just like every parent wishes that their child grows up well, ages well in good health, so do children wish the same of their parents. But there comes a time when a parent may be afflicted by a neurodegenerative condition that affects their everyday living. My name is Dr. Masi Korir, and on this episode of Health Digest, we'll tell you the story of Alzheimer's disease, narrated through a daughter whose mother has been living with the disease for the last 5 years. Dr. Masi Deche is a law scholar, a lecturer and former vice chair of the Judicial Service Commission. But today, she is the third born and second last child, speaking about the 5 years so far that she has been living with her mom, now 82 years, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. She, her husband, and 3 children speak of a mother's disease that has taken her full circle to accept.
My mom is this kind of people who are very active, very vibrant, very intelligent. She's a person with a very rich history, and you'll often hear her when she throws around her CV. She'll tell you of when I was in Alliance. So she went to all the good schools. She's held good jobs, and she, towards the last part of her working years, she was working abroad. She stayed there for 18 years with my siblings.
In 2014, as she arrived, Mercy went to meet her at the airport, but contrary to her expectations, her mother was not as excited as she was to reunite. This was a point of concern.
After that, I took her to her relatives to visit them, and there was a donkey outside, and I had her ask them, where did you get this horse from? I wondered, why would my mom confuse a horse for a donkey? But we just laughed about it. So she went back to the States where she was staying. Then she came back in December 2015. And that's when now I saw that she had really deteriorated. Her sense of dress, she could no longer dress properly. She would wear a skirt, a blouse, a sweater on top of everything. She would forget to eat. So she really lost weight. She had really lost weight. And she would also confuse words. She's very well spoken, but she could forget a word. Like I remember her telling me, you're very dangerous. You like giving things. So I told her, do you mean generous? Then she says, oh yeah, I mean generous. So she could miss out words. Instead of telling you, you look familiar, you'd hear her say you look popular, those kind of things, and would laugh about it.
Thinking her mom was depressed, Mercy took her to a counselor in Nairobi, and after 3 months of daily sessions, the verdict from the counselor was that she was not making progress, and on the contrary, she was deteriorating. They had to call on a neurosurgeon for help, and a battery of tests were done. By this time, she needed a constant caregiver by her side as she could no longer take care of herself.
When I went for the results, that's when the neurosurgeon broke the news to me and told me that it didn't look well. He put the picture, the image, MRI image of a normal brain against the one for my mom's brain. Of course, I could see there's a lot of difference. And then he told me this here is supposed to have gray matter, but there's no gray matter. So it means that your mom is losing brain cells. And he went on to explain, but in short, he told me that she was suffering from Alzheimer's.
This hit Mercy hard.
It was a difficult thing for me to accept. Oh, yeah. Oof.
The doctor informed Mercy that the condition would only get worse and they needed a way to cope. Mercy's pain, as she describes it, is like living a long goodbye. The mom who features in her childhood stories that she narrates to her sons is nowhere near the person they see now.
We have seen her losing the ability to take care of herself progressively. And because one time it was just about confusion, she's confused, but the next time, maybe after a month or a week, you find that what she was able to do last week, she cannot be able to do anymore. So it started with, say, her clothes. She lives right upstairs. The guest wing is upstairs, and we had left her with her everything. But then you realize she can change clothes like maybe 5, 6, 10 times a day, or she could put all of them, maybe 5, 6 dresses at a go. So someone advised me, withdraw the clothes, so we assign her one per day. Then she used to sleep by herself upstairs, but she can no longer do that because she would now wake up to wander around the house. And you know it's dangerous because of the stairs, so we have someone who has to sleep with her.
Dr. Dilraj Soki is a neurologist from the Aga Khan University Hospital, Nairobi, and he says that Alzheimer's is increasing in Africa, but still goes unrecognized.
The majority of people who have neurodegenerative conditions, it's usually something spontaneous. It's just happened randomly. There is some of the genes involved, but it's just for that person. It is rare, but not very rare, for it to be a condition that may run in the family. But they are usually clues for that. For example, the person is younger when they started with the dementia. Yeah, and for us, young means below the age of 45. If someone's got a problem at that stage, we're thinking beyond just a normal, age dementia like Alzheimer's. You're thinking, could this be something genetic or something that's not Alzheimer's? So for example, other conditions like Huntington's disease or frontotemporal dementias, which have a genetic background, may need to be looked at in more detail. So those are the clues that make us think, could this be something that could run in the family? And when we think about that, it's important that indeed we counsel the family about it. And counseling is important because it's not easy just sending off, for example, a whole panel of genetic tests that you can do nowadays and look for a genetic mutation. It's about, yes, your parent who's now 68 has got dementia, and it's very likely that it's not running in the family. But if you send off the genetic test, what implication does it have for you, a well carer, son or daughter, who has no problem? Are you willing to live with this now risk of developing dementia in the future, which is not 100%, it might be 25% or 10% based on that genetic test. But is that something you really want to know? Yeah, it's very highly likely that you can go the rest of your life without ever having dementia. Yeah, so that's the whole point of counseling people when it comes to whether it's running in the family or not, and whether they need a genetic test or not. And I said that clues can tell us whether we really do need to look for that. Dementia is increasing in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's unrecognized. There's actually a report that came out from an international Alzheimer's organization on this, and we expect there to be an explosion of dementia because people in Africa are now living longer. And whilst in the past people always thought, well, forgetfulness is just a part of age, I think it's now time that people do have a slightly lower threshold to think, well, actually, my dad is forgetting, but he's forgetting a bit more than I'd like, and think about seeking help for that, because then there could be things we can do to improve, his memory and his quality of life. The second thing is that not everyone can afford a specialist or an expensive scan, etc. But that's not what you need.
Basic activities of daily living like showering, eating are a tall order for Mercy's mother. She forgets.
Even eating, if you put food there for her and you walk away, she doesn't remember that she needs to eat. You have to remind her, oh, that's your food, because she can ask, you hear her asking, whose food is this? So even when you put her, you have to encourage her to eat and finish.
In is getting more age than you expect. We are all, our brains are always aging. The issue is about whether it's aging abnormally. And the way we define that is if someone's decline in their brain function is more than we expect, and it's impacting on their ability to lead their day-to-day lives. So, for example, my mom, she will forget where she's left the keys, but then she'll remember, a minute later. I don't get worried about that because, she's otherwise functioning highly well. I haven't had to take anything over from her in terms of remembering for her. But if, for example, you have someone who they consistently don't know where the keys are kept, and they, for example, don't remember whether they did pay someone or not, and now we have to take over the finances. That's an example of someone whose memory or brain function has declined more than expected and is now impinging on their ability to live a normal life. And in that situation, we would say that's a dementing process or a neurodegenerative process. In terms of the clues, that's one big clue. If you've started to take over something from the normal function, but sometimes the clues can be also very subtle. Because the brain, it's more than just about memory, it's about everything that we do, from planning, execution, social interactions. So personality changes, for example, some people become very withdrawn, or they become the other way around, very manic, and you can't explain it. The inability to, for example, navigate a car, those subtle clues, the inability to, for example, navigate a car, those subtle clues can then tell you maybe there is something that's not quite right here. So sometimes you have to think just beyond memory. You have to think about other brain functions. And if there's something that's happening that makes you think, I need to take over this for that person in the family or in the household, think, is this something that's driving that deficit? And what could it be? Is it something neurodegenerative?
What worries Mercy, though, is that in her mother's current state, one would not know when she has any other illness or if anything is amiss.
Well, why do you think your wife? They'll turn to their spouse, the loved one, in this case, the wife, and have you brought me here? That's actually a sign. It's called the head turn sign to clinic because they don't know why the clinic. And you ask the husband who has the memory problem, come to clinic today. They usually say, I don't know. It's my wife who's brought me. Well, why do you think your wife? They will turn to the spouse, the loved one, in this case, the wife, and have you brought me here? That's actually a sign. It's called the head turn sign to clinic because they don't know why they're there. So in a way, it's a blessing. But yes, in the majority of cases, the patient doesn't actually have an idea that they have a problem.
She remembers an incident in 2019 when, upon taking her for a medical checkup, they found out that her blood pressure was at a life-threatening level.
You can't know when she's having a headache or when she's not having a headache. You just have to be close to her to try and figure her out more or less like a child. And of course now, during this COVID season, you can imagine it's really, really difficult because you have to persuade her, keep her away. We try to keep her away as much as possible, away from this area, common area where many people come to. So, but I'm fortunate to have a lady who looks after her, specifically looks after her, and my house help also, Mariam, you've seen her. They really, really assist me with her, especially giving her the showers, making sure that she eats, take her medication, because now she has to be on medication, very strong medication for hypertension since that time when she was admitted. She's also reached a stage where she needs adult pampers every so often, and especially at night, and they assist me in that too.
Care team, a straight path. The whole point of being with a healthcare worker, whoever it may be, maybe it's the one who first makes the diagnosis, is because it's a journey, and that journey is, as the person continues to lose the function, the healthcare worker's role is to advise what is the next best thing to do to ensure that their loved one has good quality of life despite losing their function. Yeah, do they, for example, now need a catheter because they can't pass urine by themselves? Do they now need to wear diapers, etc.? Yeah, and also advising them on things that are not appropriate. One of the things that does happen, for example, at a later stage with people with dementia is their ability to eat and how much they eat. And it's not unusual that at that stage they start losing weight. And the concern, obviously, from anyone is that they're not eating enough, they're malnourished. And the unsuspecting person, so to speak, may be encouraged to go for artificial feeding methods, insert a tube in the nose or in the stomach and put feed through that. Whereas we know for more than a decade that in such people, it does not improve their quality of life. It may be treating us as loved ones, thinking that we're doing the right thing and hydrating them and giving them food, but it doesn't actually benefit the person in terms of increasing their life expectancy. And in fact, it can even be more detrimental. Having a tube down your nose or your stomach in itself has its own risks. So at that stage, we engage with the wider team. So, for example, the palliative care team to look after the person at home, show them how to encourage the patient to eat more, make sure they have, for example, intravenous fluids being given, etc. So it's a dynamic journey, and it's not just a one-off time that we give advice of what to do, because the situation is always changing with someone with a neurodegenerative condition.
A person with Alzheimer's lives in her own world. She doesn't understand what happens, or she doesn't appreciate what happens, because what I hear, and a medic will tell you, is that the way the brain cells are lost by a person suffering from Alzheimer is that it affects the recent memory. So the recent memory goes, and this person is left with old memories. So you find that she can be very good in narrating things that happened in the 70s, in the 60s. She's accurate. But with the current, it's all messy. Once in a while, she'll forget who I am. There was a time she was saying, she said, I'm the lady who comes here to borrow money. She doesn't know who I am. And my firstborn son is also the one she can't quite remember him because he studies in Nairobi. For some reason, she also doesn't remember what I do. So for a long time, she said, I'm the governor for Kiambu County. And so when she sees me, she sees the governor. Before that, for a long time, I used to try and correct her. But nowadays, we just sail along. And this is something I've learned from a support group that I am in on Facebook that says, don't try and contradict them, just sail along. So we sit and we talk stories. As per her world, she doesn't remember who's alive, who died. So she'll mix all the people together, and we just live with her and love on her, because that's all that we can do.
Caregivers like Mercy, her family, and the help she has in her house need attention too, as they are bound to suffer from caregiver fatigue.
To, for example, get a commode next to the bed, etc. The dementia, that's part of our job, but a large part of it is also looking after the carers, and in that case, it's the relatives and the family members. And sometimes we forget that. Our instinct is always to look after our loved one, our parent who's now old and has got dementia, and we just throw ourselves into it. But there's actually an entity called caregiver fatigue, which is very well recognized, where this, as the relative of the of the person with the dementia, now we're looking after them intensively, bathing them, clothing them, etc., day and night. That we get fatigued. The carer gets fatigued, and they don't realize until it's too late. And that's an important part of letting the carers know that they should recognize that. And in order to so support them, there's various things. So, for example, we give them the contact to the Alzheimer's Disease Organization of Kenya, which is a patient support group, who can share experiences across from families who are already in that situation and what they've done to help themselves. For example, where did they get a reliable house help from? How many night attendants did they need? What did they do, for the parent who could not walk to the toilet and they had to, for example, get a commode next to the bed, et cetera, et cetera. And even as far as, how often did the family members take respite? How long, did they manage to go away for like a week on a holiday and get someone else to replace them so they can take a break? Because if the carer doesn't look after themselves, how will they look after their loved one?
With the brain bound to age too as one ages, and as life expectancy improves in Kenya and other African countries, Mercy, like other few whose parents have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, wonder about the gaps in care and management of the condition.
Whenever I look at her, and I'm very grateful because I'm able to take care of her, I'm able to provide for all the needs that the needs that are incidental to Alzheimer's, whether it's adult pampers, a good diet, and a good place to stay in and pay for her, a caregiver. And then again, she's loved by my kids and my husband and all the people who live around here. Even neighbors, they and my friends, they all really love her. So, but I wonder, what happens to those people who don't have people to look after them, the old people, and I imagine people who have not been diagnosed, people with the disease and they've not been diagnosed.
Examination of the memory, which takes about 5 minutes in the clinic. It's like just a scoring system. It's like an exam sheet out of 30 that you can use to assess, where is this person's functioning going on. Then, the first thing they should do is get checked out, be it with their family doctor, who can then either refer them to the general physician or even a neurologist or a psychiatrist. There's a breadth of us who deal with this kind of problem and to get assessed. A standard assessment would involve ensuring there's no other reason why the loved one may be having memory problems or difficulty functioning. Simple things like a thyroid disorder or a vitamin deficiency, which can be ruled out with standard blood tests. Number two, get at least a comprehensive brain scan to see what the brain looks like. And then number three, to do a baseline examination of the memory, which takes about 5 minutes in the clinic. It's like just a scoring system. It's like an exam sheet out of 30 that you can use to assess, where is this person's function right now. And once that's been put together, then it's a matter of making the diagnosis. The commonest cause for neurodegeneration in terms of dementia is a condition called Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease, there's various stages where you go from deposits of protein in the brain for which the reasons we don't understand, but there are many other causes of dementia apart from Alzheimer's, which can present in their own way. So once that diagnosis is made by the doctor, the healthcare worker, about what this condition is, then apart from supporting the person who has it with medication that is appropriate, for the family, it's also a lot about education, knowing that, what this condition entails, that this is a incurable condition. You can't give anything that will reverse the process and stop it, but that we can give medicines to maybe slow down the progress, maybe even improve it over a period of time, but that eventually the brain will continue to degenerate, and therefore, there will be signs to look out for. The commonest things that we educate people on is what to expect as the dementia progresses. So, for example, if it's the most common Alzheimer's disease, there's various stages where you go from mild, moderate, severe, end stage, and as time goes on, the person loses more and more of their function. So at when they're the severe stage, they can't dress themselves, they can't eat themselves, etc. Yeah, and that's what they need to look at.
It's still a disease that has a lot of stigma with it. People talk with hush tones concerning it. In fact, many people tell me, "Oh, you're brave, you're talking about it." But for me, it doesn't even require any bravery. It is just something that we must talk about, because it is here with us, and there are so many people who are suffering. And not just that man from SGR. There was a time I saw a woman being beaten up in a hotel in Machakos. She had gone there and claimed ownership of the hotel, and she And you know, people won't understand. People will think you're just being funny, or you're involving yourself in criminal behavior. And I keep remembering the many times that I also really blamed my mom. I thought she was lazy. I thought she was being stubborn. But it is the disease. It's nothing that it was something that was beyond her control.
In the world, there's probably about 3 or 4 drugs that work on that process of the protein deposits in the brain. And they're not many, and they do take many, many months to work. And sometimes people get side effects and you just move to the other one. But the same drug will probably give more side effects rather than benefit in a different kind of dementia. And in those other kinds of dementias that are not Alzheimer's, more than just giving a drug to reverse or slow down or reverse the condition, as you can in Alzheimer's, it's more important to deal with the symptoms of the condition. So, for example, in someone who has frontotemporal dementia, which involves the front part of the brain, and that's our social engagement part of the brain, the patient may, for example, be depressed, apathetic, they don't want to engage, and they, rather than giving them a dementia drug, if you give them a mood stabilizing drug, like you do to any other person with depression, for example, they actually improve. Yeah, their behavior becomes more controlled, they become more interactive, or the other way around. Someone who has got frontotemporal dementia has become very aggressive, hitting out at strangers and talking, things that are beyond the boundaries of social control. If you give them such a medication, it gets controlled. So it does depend on the kind of dementia. But yes, there are medicines that can be used in particularly Alzheimer's dementia, some that can be used in Parkinson's-related dementia or Lewy body disease, but not all dementias require that same medication.
Mercy is alive to the fact that the journey with her mom will be no smooth sailing because her progress is in reverse, a constant decline and regression.
These are people who have done a lot to take care of us. I remember my mom really did a lot to make sure that I am where I am. If it were not for her, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't have achieved whatever it is, little or much, that I have achieved. So the least we can all do is to look after those who are suffering, who are not able to take care of themselves, and especially due to Alzheimer's.
Mercy considers herself as a caregiver, an everyday frontline worker. And so should everyone else taking care of someone with dementia.
For those who are going through whatever it is that I'm going through, accept assistance, accept help, especially emotional help and other social support. So I know that with the help of the many people who assist me, I will be able to deal with whatever, the unknown that is there ahead of us.
Caregivers, just like the persons diagnosed with the disease, need some care and attention too. Dr. Mercy Korir for KTN News Health Digest. But still to come is Doctor's Diary.
What drives me is simply the recognition that, yes, you may achieve a lot personally, you may achieve a lot professionally. As a neuroradiologist, I gave myself one big responsibility: to transfer this knowledge.